Well, today I'm drilling out a plate for my new router table setup. I had a phenolic plate drilled out for a Bosch 1617, but this is a different size for my new router table, so I'll need to drill this aluminum plate to match. So I'll show you the quick process on that, as well as just some overall thoughts on how to set up a router table and some of the things I've learned doing it a few times now. This is a Trend router plate, and I like that it's aluminum. But one thing to know is the sizes on these are not necessarily standard. This is 12 inches wide by 9 inches deep, and you know, a more typical layout might be 11 3/4 wide by 9 1/4 deep, but one's not better than the other. It's just important to know that they're not interchangeable. The router is going to be the same either way. It's the 1617, and this is kind of an old-fashioned design. It's really not my favorite router for handheld use, but you know, in a router table, it starts to make a lot of sense, and it's actually just a workhorse. So I have the correct 3-hole spacing on this phenolic plate, and I started playing around with this and put in the guide bushing inserts in both plates, thinking I could just maybe find a socket that matched that size to keep everything centered as I went ahead and drilled it out. But this inside diameter around the lip was actually different on the two inserts, so I kept fiddling with it to see if I could get two that actually were the same diameter. And as it turns out, this 2 1/8 inch diameter was a match for the 54 millimeter ring on the Trend setup, so I think if I just use those and find something to index at, that could work quite well. Now the Craig uses kind of a twist lock insert, whereas the Trend has snap-in insert rings, and this one is interesting because it has a small diameter guide bushing insert here, but you can pop out just that inner ring and have a little larger opening for bigger bits. Or just swap that for a number of different insert rings that it comes with. And that's the one I need to match this up. So I got lucky and found a dust collection fitting that had the exact same diameter there. So that'll just index everything together and make sure that it's centered, and I can position it wherever I need it to drill out those holes. Now this isn't the first Trend plate that I've drilled out. I've done it before on my benchtop table, but I remembered something very specific about the way this router mounts. Now this tip won't help everybody because it really applies to this Trend plate mounted to a Bosch 1617, but in that particular instance, this hole actually works just fine and keeps everything centered. So even for a 3-hole layout, I only need to drill 2 holes. Now the Trend gear does come pre-drilled to a certain extent, but it's only to accept Trend routers. Now if you don't have something like this to use as a hard template, you may just have to source a paper template online, and I notice a lot of manufacturers still provide that information. Well, if this video topic feels like it's right up your alley, do me a favor, give me a quick thumbs up or subscribe to the channel. I greatly appreciate it. Then we'll just chamfer out those holes a little bit to give room for the head of the screw. Okay, so I think that'll be a pretty good solution to mounting up my Bosch 1617 to this Trend plate. Okay, with the plate mounted, we'll get this situated in the router table, and then in a bit I want to show you some interesting features on my new fence. The plate leveling system on this one is fairly typical. It uses set screws around the perimeter of the plate. Let's see, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 set screws. The one that might normally be here is missing, and I'll show you why. There's just a little bit of a relief cut in the support ledge there, so really nothing for a set screw to bear on, but this one has an interesting feature. There's actually embedded magnets, and that gives you a nice bearing spot for each of those set screws. And then your threaded inserts in the corners, but this is always what I like to see, is a little extra meat in the corners. And in fact, when I route these recesses out myself, like on my recent portables that I did, this is exactly how I did it. Angled it off a bit, and if you want to check that technique out, I've got it as my no jigsaw router insert in the description below. It worked well on this one, this one, this one, and that one, so I don't see why it wouldn't work for you. It can be a little bit tricky to set this because you'll work on leveling out the set screws, and then you go to add your corner screws and it changes slightly, so there might be a little bit of back and forth with it, but as long as you're using a good straight edge, it doesn't take too much time to get that nice and flush. As a final check, just make sure that you don't have any hang-ups, especially in the direction of feed. And on the snap-in style of insert ring, there's actually a little semicircular projection there. Just make sure that that aligns with the matching shape in the plate, and it'll snap in without any fuss. This is a plate and not a router lift, so you can't do full above the table bit changes unless you have the right workaround. And for me, that's these bent wrenches that Bosch sells, and that's pretty slick if you can avoid the router lift altogether and still manage topside bit changes. So, you know, you can spend anywhere from $200 to $400 on a router lift if you go that way, but these wrenches, last I checked, were about 26 bucks, so I'll throw these down in the description if you want to check them out. Plus, I have some of my other favorite router table accessories listed as well. So that's about how high I can raise the collet of my 1617 on this Trend router plate, but if you're using an actual Trend brand router, I'd love to know how high that setup raises and how easy the bit changes are, so definitely leave me a comment if you have any experience with that. But with an open stand like this, it's pretty easy to dial in your bit height. Best feature on this router table? Well, for me it has to be the fence assembly. The aluminum extrusion on this is just really solid. I've used it before on their portable router table because it's the same aluminum profile, just in a shorter length. As well as on my custom K-leg router table that I built from phenolic coated plywood. So there's more information down in the video resources if you want to learn more about making your own custom portable router table. You know, I've complained about the dust collection port on other router table fences, and this one is really sturdy. The reason why is it actually slides in 2 grooves in the fence, so by the time you screw it down, it's just really solid. Yep, that ought to do it. Now this one has sliding faces like I've come to expect from most modern router tables, but what I like about this one is these aren't through holes, so there's no chance of the fastener spinning. Instead, that just goes into a threaded insert in the face. And there's another really clever detail that they've built in, which is starter pins that are mounted right into the fence assembly itself. So you've got this long starter pin here, and then a shorter profile right over here. So you're not going to lose those if they store right on your fence. And then another thing that kind of blew me away was the joiner rods are actually secured right in the fence. So you're not going to lose those in transport, yet you do have that feature if you ever like to use your router table kind of like a mini joiner. I will say I've never been a fan of the featherboard right over the router bit, so I usually wind up swapping that out for an aftermarket featherboard. Or you can go with my absolute favorite, these stock guides, because they act like a fence and a table featherboard all at once. All right, so there's a little rundown on my process for drilling out the plate and just generally setting up a router table. Hope it helps, and good luck with your next shop upgrade.